This is an absolute steal for the Cincinnati Bengals as a wild new report has dropped surrounding a Bengals trade that not only has fans fired up, but changes everything for this Bengals team going forward. To break down this trade and discuss what it means following some wild comments from Zac Taylor surrounding this player who's going to be involved in the trade. A ton to go over on this episode, as well as a few other interesting reports. But before we get into it, a quick reminder, folks, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Bengals content. About 67% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. You guys have been absolute beasts with the support. Now, folks, there's a lot to go over today, and this is going to be surrounding a cornerback, but a very interesting trade that has been proposed. And quite frankly, folks, is a robbery for the Cincinnati Bengals. And let's dive right into it now. If you're unfamiliar, last week, there was some, regarding a player who was fallen completely out of favor in Cam Taylor-Britt. You can see this here. Cincinnati Bengals should add to defense by making this Cam Taylor-Britt trade. This will give the Bengals 3 established starting cornerbacks and allow all parties to have a fresh start. Now, of course, we know Cam Taylor-Britt at one point was pretty highly regarded by Bengals fans and even just fans of the NFL alike. But since, at some point this year, it kind of fell out of favor. And we know the Bengals defense has finally witnessed a cornerback begin to develop. We know how good DJ Turner II has been this year, and hopefully he'll be the next star cornerback for us. But at the same time, he's shown the last couple of weeks, even against the Steelers, that he can be a shutdown cornerback. Now, at the same time, there's one player in the room who fell off of the grid, and that is Cam Taylor-Britt. Now, I want to dive into some comments from Zac Taylor surrounding Cam Taylor-Britt. You can see here, he struggled last season a little bit. This year, he's fallen completely out of favor. We'll dive into his stats in a minute. He's only started one game, I believe it is, on the year and has gotten benched a lot recently. And Zac Taylor was asked about it and said, we just got other DBs that we're going to give a shot to. And that's the way things have gone so far this season for Cam Taylor-Britt. Now, last year wasn't great. Obviously, a couple of years ago was really good, really highly regarded. But for a Bengals team now that every single win matters more than anything, they're going to probably go for a change of scenery and look to shop Taylor-Britt because, of course, we have Dax Hill and Turner. So let's dive into our report that has dropped here. I'll make it bigger for you folks. It's still a little bit small, but I'll read it out for you. The Seattle Seahawks have been fielding trade calls for established cornerback Riq Woolen. He has 11 interceptions in 4 NFL seasons, and this article proposes a Woolen for Taylor-Britt trade. And of course, Woolen was drafted in the 5th round. The Bengals would likely be able to gain Woolen's services by sending Taylor-Britt and a late round pick to the Seahawks. And by doing so, they would, of course, add a ball hawk to their secondary. So this is where things get extremely interesting. Now, let's look at I know there's a few screenshots there. Let's look at the Bengals secondary and just some of their defensive, arrangements in general. So we'll dive into Riq Woolen in a minute here. Very solid player. Someone that we know the Seahawks, again, are fielding calls for. Now, looking at their cornerback, I guess the depth here for the Cincinnati Bengals, you can see there's a couple different players. Now, you obviously know Cam Taylor-Britt. He's fallen down to the 3rd string. You can see there, 3rd string cornerback, which is an interesting position to be in. And of course, you also have Marco Wilson, who used to play, I believe, for the Cardinals, but you also have, of course, Josh Newton and DJ Ivey. But the biggest ones here, of course, you also have Dax. There's a lot of players, right? But looking at Cam Taylor-Britt, he's fallen down now to the 3rd string. I guess even there, he's just fallen completely out of favor. And that's where things have started to get a little bit interesting for the Cincinnati Bengals team. Because we know at one point, again, he was seen as a very interesting, fundamental, foundational piece of this secondary and someone that, as a Bengals fan, and a lot of Bengals fans felt really encouraged about. Now let's start with Britt stats, and we can dive into Riq Woolen here. So let's look at Cam Taylor-Britt. Of course, we know rookie year. He's still only 26 years old. This would be an upside play for both teams. I guess the Seahawks in this case as well. 12 starts in 2023 with 4 picks. Last year started all 17 games, and ultimately that he played in 3 interceptions and of course 75 yards returned. So not a bad year last year. Now again, he fell off a little bit. Some people are say that. At the same time, it wasn't a completely horrible year this year, and I think people were looking for him to take a big leap last year. Whether or not that happened, I'll leave it up to you guys to discuss in the comment section. This year, like I mentioned earlier, he has started 1 game, has no picks, and of course, you look at some of the advanced stuff, yards against, all these different things. He's gotten outperformed, right? Simple as that. He's gotten outperformed, whether it be DJ Turner, whether it be Dax Hill, and clearly now it seems he's even behind a guy like Marco Wilson, playing the right cornerback spot. So at the end of the day here, They have a lot of depth. Left cornerback, you have DJ Ivy and DJ Turner, two DJs, and then of course you also have Dax Hill, Josh Newton, a lot of players around here to where the competitive nature makes it much more difficult for a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt in the sense of that's exactly why Zach Taylor said what he said about giving, I mean, they have a lot of them, giving a DB opportunities rather to other players. Now, in the same vein, if you're able to pull off, let's say it's Cam Taylor-Britt and a seventh for Riq Woolen. Is that something you guys would do? Riq Woolen is 3 years removed from a Pro Bowl year, Defensive Rookie of the Year third in voting. This year hasn't been fantastic, and that's why the Seahawks have been fielding calls for him, like the article kind of implies here. Now, they entered the season at the same time, and obviously Riq Woolen's a bit more established in the sense of he's had a better year like overall, but at the same time, they could both really benefit from a completely fresh change of scenery. And that's something that it's pretty clear at this point. I think the Bengals are going to be approaching this trade deadline. They're going to be doing so with a buy approach rather than selling, right? There was talks about a Trey Hendrickson trade. I covered it. I don't think they're going to do that. They're probably going to throw the franchise tag on Trey Hendrickson in the offseason, assuming they don't trade him, go on from there and hope that they can acquire some other help for, I mean, especially the O-line for Joe Burrow. But it's an interesting move. And I think the only reason I call it a steal is because of the fact that they're not using Cam Britt anyway. If you can get him for a very, very cheap pick alongside Cam Taylor-Britt, take the risk on this. And then, of course, you're elevating your ceiling. And I think you're also elevating your floor a little bit. Now, some people aren't super high on Riq Woolen. I think he's fine, right? At the end of the day, could he go back to what he was in 2022? Maybe. But you can take the same gamble from the Seahawks side of, hey, Cam Britt returned to what he was earlier on in his career in 2022, 2023? Maybe. And that's the biggest question mark. So, there's been some other, trades as well being thrown out there about, the Packers trying to land him. There's a lot of different names coming out. And at the end of the day, folks, it's going to be interesting to see what teams are interested in him because there has been a lot of talk about Cam Britt getting traded to other teams, specifically because of the fact that teams cornerbacks aren't the easiest position to get. And when you have young guys who have shown success at the highest level like Cam Britt has, the end of the day, it'll be interesting to see what they do. But this would be a robbery, at least in my mind, just to get some new, fresh faces in there and hopefully help towards that push of acquiring some more talent in hopes of, winning that division, which, again, to be clear, I don't know if they should go all in, spend a ton of assets. We don't know exactly when Joe Burrow is returning, for one. Mid-December was the report, but two, how he's going to, fare immediately back from his return. The O-line's a little bit paper. The defense has been a little bit, a little bit suspect out there as well. And of course, you have two of the best wide receivers in football, so you can't hurt there. But you look at the schedule ahead, and it's going to be quite the interesting one. Of course, you play the Jets, you play the Bears, a couple easy games, and they have a much easier schedule than the Pittsburgh Steelers do. That's why that game was so crucial against the Steelers the other week. And of course, you run it back against the Steelers there in a few weeks after the bye week. So folks, let me know down below what your thoughts are. The trade deadline is in between weeks 9 and week 10, of course, with a bye week, double full week off to get everybody acclimated. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. You guys are beasts. Cheers.